In this video, we will be analyzing the impacts of DNA fingerprinting on the mystery disappearance of Miss Muffin's milk. One afternoon, Miss Muffin wanted to grab a drink of her favorite milk, but realized it had been stolen. She notified the police, and luckily they were able to contract a single tuft of hair from the crime scene. This tuft of hair resulted in 4 potential suspects. First was Mr. Whiskers, a roommate of Miss Muffin's. Next was Mr. Whiskers' daughter, Mopsy, who had a slight anger problem. Next was Scout, the neighborhood problem puppy. And lastly, there was Mitzi, Miss Muffin's mortal enemy. The police requested fingerprint samples from each of the suspects in order to run a DNA fingerprint analysis against the tuft of fur that was left at the crime scene. DNA was collected and then amplified for 2 different VNTR loci, which ran on 2 separate gels, resulting in a DNA fingerprinting analysis gel that we could use to compare the sample tuft of hair collected from the crime scene, Miss Muffin's DNA, and the 4 suspects' DNA. Assessing both loci will make it easier to see which suspect's DNA match up with the sample and eventually who committed the milk-stealing crime. One thing to note is that if a suspect is guilty, their DNA will match the sample DNA perfectly at both loci. The first step in finding the milk stealer is to see which bands match up at both loci. First, we can analyze the VNTR locus 1 results. When looking at the sample DNA in comparison to the suspect's DNA and Miss Muffin's DNA, you can see that Scout's bands and Mitzi's bands match perfectly. You may also see that although some of the other suspects may have one band that matches the sample, this does not mean they are guilty, because both bands have to match each band on the sample for them to even be considered as guilty of the crime. Next, you can look at the VNTR locus 2 and identify which of the suspects' bands match up perfectly with the sample at the left of the crime scene. At this locus, you can identify that both Mopsy's bands and Scout's bands match the sample tuft of fur found at the scene. This leads the police to believe that Scout is guilty of stealing Miss Muffin's milk. Lastly, it is important to note that even though we are aware that Mr. Whiskers is the father of Mopsy, we can further prove this by evaluating the DNA fingerprinting gel. Each of the bands at hand represents a DNA loci, and as we know from Genetics 311, one allele is passed down from the mother and the other allele is passed down from the father. It is evident that in the first loci that Miss Mopsy's band matches her father's, meaning that her lower banded allele was inherited from her mother. The same can be seen in loci 2. Mopsy's bottom band matches one of her father's bands, so it can be assumed that her top banded allele was inherited from her mother. You can see the overall impact genetics has on criminal justice by analyzing this kitten crime scene. References are as follows.